one paycheck should be before taxes, how much they need to bring in. So after taxes, they are funding their household. So that's another thing they have to figure out. How much is it costing you to fund your household? And put their salary in the budget on a different line than any employees or staff that they have. And then as they go through the weeks doing their money allocation, they do that in the best interest of their company. They pay themselves their payroll check along with everybody else, but also they're putting money in that fourth bucket of cash. We call it reserves, but it's really for their retirement. So they're getting paid twice, one for the future and one for the present. And that really calms things down because they can sleep better at night knowing that that money is there.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponto. Each week, I bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Sandra Simmons. She is the creator of the Cash Flow Mojo System and the founder of Money Management Solutions, and she's on a mission to help business owners stop wondering where their money went. She started her career working with brands like McDonald's, Pizza Hut, and 7-Eleven, but quickly realized that making money isn't the hard part, keeping it is. So in 1994, she launched her own business and has spent the last 3 decades helping thousands of owners get out of cash flow chaos, out of debt, and back in control. Known for her straight talking style and practical approach, Sandra makes cash flow simple, doable, and dare we say, actually interesting. Congrats on making cash flow interesting, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on because it's something that, while it doesn't seem like it's directly related to human connection for businesses, when people are super stressed out about money, it makes them unable to act beyond the kind of fight or flight mode, which keeps them from being able to build stronger relationships and think more strategically and longer term, and really hampers their ability to connect. And so I'd love to hear more about what you've seen work for people that are struggling with cash flow issues in their business, whether it's like a solopreneur or a small business or a scaling company. They all can struggle with cash flow. So what are some of the tips you've seen that work really well, and maybe share some success stories about people that are able to turn it around and not be stressed out so much about money?
Yeah, so as an accountant and a tax preparer, I can tell you that most business owners are stressed out about money. It's a subject that they're uncomfortable talking about. They don't like having to deal with it or admin because they're busy working in their business. But to be honest, accounting is a recording tool. It is historical documents that are primarily valuable in tax reporting. And they were designed to do just that. They were never designed to function as a coach to tell you what to do next. That is the job of cash flow management and planning. And so when they get stressed out about something that's happening financially in their business, they go into a reactive mode, and they don't quite know which direction to go in, or they make a snap decision only to find out that it wasn't the best decision they could have made. And so then that stresses them out even more. So cash flow management and planning puts them back into control. And the first thing that they need to do to get in control is to find out what their income planning target is. And the income planning target is how much money they need to bring into the business every week to do better than breaking even. And so in order to do that, they have to add a number of elements. So I'll go through those really quick. They have to add, what is their cost of goods sold average on a weekly basis? What are their business expenses, the overhead? How much debt, if any, do they have to pay off? And there are 4 buckets of cash in my system that they have to put savings into. One is for emergencies. One is for business expansion. One is for paying taxes and legal fees. and the other one is for their retirement. And I call that their second paycheck that they should be paying themselves. So when they add all that up, say you pull a profit and loss statement for a year and you divide it by 52 weeks, that gives you your exact income planning target that you need to bring in every week. So then rather than being reactive to, oh my gosh, we had a bad week, you start your week by planning how you're going to generate that revenue. And so automatically they're taking control and being proactive rather than being reactive to a bad week. So one of the things that I want to point out and don't want to forget is every business owner should be paying themselves 2 paychecks. One paycheck should be before taxes, how much they need to bring in. So after taxes, they are funding their household. So that's another thing they have to figure out. How much is it costing you to fund your household? And put their salary in the budget on a different line than any employees or staff that they have. And then as they go through the weeks doing their money allocation, they do that in the best interest of their company. They pay themselves their payroll check along with everybody else, but also they're putting money in that fourth bucket of cash. We call it reserves, but it's really for their retirement. So they're getting paid twice, one for the future and one for the present. And that really calms things down because they can sleep better at night knowing that that money is there. They get less stressed out at work, so they can treat their clients better. They don't snap at their staff. And the clients and the staff kind of react to how the business owner, the founder, is acting. And so when the stress goes down, the relationships get a lot easier.
Yeah, I think there's that is such a key impact on the overall success of the business is how de-stressed the founder or the executives can be, because if they're not stressed out and they're able to, like I said, treat the clients better, treat their team members better, and build that culture, because whatever behavior they exhibit is going to be mirrored by their employees, and it's going to be reflected in the client experiences that their customers enjoy or don't enjoy.
Right.
And so it really is important for the leaders, the executives, to have that ability to be calm and not be stressed out about money, because it has such a bigger impact on the rest of their business. And people aren't going to assume, oh, they must be stressed about money. And I understand why they're stressed. They're just going to feel like, oh, well, I don't know why they're mad at me, and they'll make up their own reasons. They'll fill in those own gaps, and that creates all sorts of kind of issues with trust and communication, and you're going to lose top talent. You're going to lose good clients because the stress is poisoning all those relationships. And it's such a important thing to understand how the brain works when it's stressed versus when it's relaxed and has that sense of safety and calm, especially these days when that seems like it's at a rarity for a lot of people, especially in the business world. So what are some of the examples you can share of people that have applied this and been able to get out of the kind of vicious cycle of reactive decision-making and stress?
I have a lot of client stories that are really fun to tell. Let's pick one that has to do with budgeting. So I had a chiropractor who was a client, and he lives in a place where during the month of August, everybody leaves town and goes off on vacation. It's like the whole city just empties out, and he has to stay there and keep his chiropractic clinic open so that the workers, the service workers who are also staying there, if they get hurt, they have to come to the clinic. And he doesn't make much money. Sometimes he gets no business in August. Sometimes he gets a little, sometimes he gets a lot. But when everybody, including your grandmother and your dog, leave town, it's pretty slim pickings. So at the point that he called me and asked me, could I help? He was about in the third week of August, and he said, the bills keep coming, but I am out of money and I don't have money to pay the bills. So I said, well, how much does it cost you to run your company each month? What are the bills? What do they add up to? And he had to get out a pen and paper and noodle some figures around and gave me the figure. And I said, well, divide that by 52 weeks. And when he divided it by 52 weeks, it wasn't a lot of money. It was, a few $100, maybe 250 or 275, something like that. And so I said, well, here's a tactic that you can use. You're almost through August and you can't pay the bills, so I'll help you find some cash. But first, let's handle next August, so you're not ever stressed about August again. So I said, put in the bill window, put in a bill and call it August. Put in the total amount that you told me that cost to run your company. And in the invoice column, instead of putting the invoice number, put that number that you got when you divided it by 52 weeks. And so we put that bill in, and I said, okay, so now every week you're going to allocate of the money that's available, that amount of money toward August. And by the time next August rolls around, you don't even have to have one patient and you can pay all of your bills. And he was like, wow, that's so simple. And I never thought of that. And so then what we did to find him some money is I looked at his P&L, and being an accountant, I could recognize when he was kind of out of sync of the algorithms that when they run your electronic tax return through, it's kind of like a Google. They have these ranges for different categories. Office supplies is a biggie. And so if you are like way over what you should be spending in office supplies based on the type of industry you're in and how much money you made that year, it'll trigger an audit. So I looked at his P&L, and it didn't take me long to figure out quite a number of places that he was wasting some money. So it's like, okay, cancel this and stop doing that. And, within a week or two, you're already going to have some extra cash. And then if there's a supplier that's, getting mad and threatening to put you on COD, call them up and say, look, I'm just kind of tight because everybody left town. I haven't had a lot of business, but I will pay you within the next 3 weeks. And, just calm them down. So we went through that little exercise, and that handled him. And he was okay after that. And he did exactly that. He paid into the August bill and kept it in escrow all year long until he got to August. And then regardless of whether he had any business or not, he could pay all of his bills. So that's one little tactic.
Yeah, I like that idea of having that foresight to know that when you have slow months, you need to budget around those. And I think it also shows the importance of having good relationships with the other vendors you're working with, because if you have one where you're already in good standing, then if they understand that you're have a slow slumps, and they'll be willing to give you that grace because you already have it's not just a transactional thing. There's more of a relationship there, versus if they already kind of don't really like working with you because the relationship isn't there, then if you do have these issues or in a little tight 1 month, they're not likely to extend that grace or accept a late payment because they don't really like you that much. It's more of the transactional arrangement. So the combination of having the planning for the slow months and having that surplus versus week to week, like it sounds like he had been doing before, and then communicating when he did need help with the vendors and helping him understand the situation and also like finding out what he really didn't need for his business when it comes to expenses, or negotiating better deals
Right.
with those existing vendors to keep a similar service, or finding alternatives, I think are all important things to understand how they impact not just the cash flow of your business, but also your mental state and your stress levels and stuff. Because if okay, then I'm going to be a little bit tight, but you're confident that your relationships will help you buffer those disruptions, and it's much easier to get through those tight periods. And if you're worried that, oh, your vendors are all going to drop you because of a hiccup that, or something that like disrupted your cash flow.
Yeah, that's true. You really should make good relationships with your suppliers because they have slow months too. It's not like, they have a business that is just going gangbusters and they never have to worry about not being able to pay a bill. We've all been there more than once. So if you're just call them up as a human being and say, look, I'm having a slow month. They may be having a slow month that month too, but they appreciate the honesty of you calling and saying, look, you know me, I'm going to pay you. I just can't do it right now. I can do it in 3 weeks, and then absolutely follow through on that 3-week promise. And they'll cut you some slack because they probably have done the same thing to one of their suppliers at some point in their history, is needed a little slack. So,
yeah, I think that showing up as a human and being and showing that vulnerability and saying, hey, I'm struggling, people think it's going to be like ostracize them from the group or make them seem weaker. But I think with how universal the struggle with money is for people, that it's much more likely to strengthen your relationships with colleagues or coworkers or vendors or clients, and sharing when you're struggling and how you're feeling about it, and that you're feeling stressed, that you're overwhelmed. That sort of without like kind of like going too far down that rabbit hole with them, but it just admitting that everything's not fine is something that I think we don't do enough especially in the US. We kind of have this, like, everyone tries to put on masks and pretend like
everything's fine.
Not struggling, everything's fine, but things are definitely not fine for most people. So that honesty is, especially these days, I'd see them as a refreshing change from the brush off and the kind of ignoring the elephant in the room. Yeah. And I think would be not only help you get that grace period to until you have the money so you can pay the bills, but also that shared experience with the vendors, like you said, because they're probably struggling in some other ways too, helps strengthen that bond even more, versus them thinking, man, something didn't quite seem right, but they didn't tell me. So again, they make up assumptions and they're not really connecting with you like they will if you are willing to share what you're struggling with, because it's if you already have it on good standing, they're likely to want to help you out, because that's what is the way our brains are wired. We want to help people out that we feel connected with and we have relationships with. And so they know that if you're in good standing and they need help from you in the future, you're much more likely to extend that support if they helped you out in the past. So
absolutely,
it's totally worth making that leap to expressing the vulnerability there.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to do that with someone and they helped me out and said, don't worry about it, 3 weeks is fine, I'm good. After I paid them, I would call them and say, I really appreciate you being patient with me. And if there's ever anything I can help you with, don't hesitate to make me your first phone call. So, and then that kind of establishes that relationship and strengthens it as well. So, yeah. And, I've worked with businesses in over 50 industries of all different sizes, from startups to, they're making 25 million a year or so, 50 or less employees. But I can tell you that a modest amount of income coming into a business, if they use a cash flow management and planning system on it, they can do very, very well and stay profitable on a modest amount of income. Whereas I've seen businesses that make millions and they go broke. And it's because they are not managing their money to their own best interests of their company. They're just grabbing their checkbook and paying bills and making their suppliers wealthy without any thought or planning on what their business is going to need, not necessarily this week, but what about next year and 5 years from now? And they never look down to the misty end of the road when they want to exit their business called their retirement. And, they're so busy working in their business, they don't work on their business, on things like that. And, I'll tell you a story about a guy who was making a lot of money. He was a cosmetic dentist, and he worked on, very, very wealthy people, and he made a lot of money. And I was so surprised when he started using my system, and even more surprised when I was out in California and I was giving a live seminar. It was kind of like a workshop. And I saw him sitting in the audience, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I knew he was on my system, but I didn't know he'd show up today. So, of course, when the seminar was over, I had to go and find him. And I said, Doc, I'm so surprised to see you here. I didn't know you were coming. I knew you were using my system, but I had no idea that you would be in the audience today. And he goes, listen, he said, this system has saved me. And I said, well, why did you get on it in the first place? And he said, well, you know me. And I said, yeah, I do. He says, I make $200,000 a month and I spend $200,000 a month. And I have houses everywhere. I have yachts. My wife thinks nothing of going over to Europe and paying $40,000 for a handbag, carrying it to one event. She comes back, she gives it away to charity. He says, we have lots of stuff, but what we don't have is any money in retirement. And I was shocked. He didn't have any money in retirement. And he was in his 60s. He said, I got on your system to hold me accountable to put money in retirement. And he said, and that's what I'm doing. So see, it's just, it's being proactive rather than reactive and planning what you need.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Sandra. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please leave a comment, and subscribe. If you want to learn more about myself or Sandra, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.